So we have a very interesting rumor going on right now in the PlayStation landscape, and it's not just a rumor, it's a rumor on its own, but it's also right next to something where there was a discovery of a job posting at SIE, a very real job posting located in Japan for Sony's hardware team for the PlayStation business. And that job posting is certainly revealing enough to where some people are putting two and two together, and that kind of goes into what we are going to talk about today, which is something we've actually brought up before, and that is the possibility of Sony revisiting portables, actual local play portables, so not a streaming remote play device. This would be a portable PlayStation that could locally download things from the PlayStation Store, and that would be primarily PlayStation 4 software. So, the actual rumor itself comes from the Russian journalist Anton Logvinov, who was apparently one of the first people to mention that Sony would start shipping their games on PC. So they put this rumor up on Telegram over the weekend. I can't speak to the legitimacy or the reliability of this person. Obviously, from what I'm reading, apparently this is somebody to write off completely, and it's not worth humoring. But either way, this was the source of this rumor, and that's where it was making the rounds. So we'll at least humor what they're saying here. So when translated, this does read, and I quote, "By the way, I can confirm that Sony is preparing a new PSP4 release, but damn, there are only PS4 games in the launch lineup, which are generally available on PC and therefore on Steam Deck. Retail chains, by the way, are quite skeptical. Either Sony is doing something completely bonkers here, I think that's what they're trying to say, or they are still keeping secrets from their partners." So that's where the rumor is. That kind of goes back to one that was from 2-3 months ago. This was when Moore's Law is Dead released some of those internal documents in a separate upload on YouTube, and that's where, it was obviously going over primarily PlayStation 5 Pro stuff, codenamed Trinity, but in there was also, I believe that was the same upload, but it was a reference to Sony also possibly working on some kind of handheld, and he wasn't sure at the time if that was something that is on the roadmap in the next, let's say short term, 2-3 years, or if they're planning on doing this long term, 5-6 years down the road, and that would be able to, say, play PlayStation 5 software or something. Again, that's like purely speculative, but at least that's what Moore's Law is Dead was referring to at the time, and I believe that was the same upload that was taken down by SIE, which adds more reliability, at least to what we knew at the time, which was most third parties were getting PS5 Pro dev kits. But either way, the point is, the job posting is something that popped up a little bit before LTPS when it went up on Friday. So this is mostly fresh, or rather it was discovered somewhat recently. So this is located again in Japan. This would be Sony's hardware team because SIE headquarters is primarily in California, but the hardware team still is at the mothership, so the Sony group in Japan. So the title of this job listing is System Software Developer. You would be working on a system development with program compatibility between different architectures. So under roles and responsibilities, it says, through translation, develop systems to enable programs developed for our entertainment game consoles to run on game consoles with different architectures. Specifically, we will enable a large number of game titles developed for PlayStation to run on the new architecture system. This system must be equipped with a mechanism to facilitate defect analysis in the event of problems. And then for skills and qualifications, they want C, C++, familiarity with recent major CPU architectures, experience in assembly language dev for one or more architectures, familiarity with just-in-time and ahead-of-time compilation, and they also want applicants that can read and discuss these technical issues in English. So this is absolutely worth discussing because it's out there in plain view. It's a real job posting. They're looking for somebody to help build some kind of compatibility layer between one library of PlayStation games and getting them moved over to a different architecture. So there's enough there for us to speculate, I guess we should say, but there's not enough there for us to really pin down exactly what library of games, where is it going. When they say different architectures, is that simply referring to, going from Zen 2 to Zen 5 for AMD APUs, right? Because the safe guess here is that going into PlayStation 6, Sony's probably going to keep using AMD as the primary vendor supplying the APU for PlayStation 5. So that's kind of the safe guess. Although the immediate discussion surrounding this job posting was maybe Sony's looking at doing ARM, like using an ARM-based PlayStation 6, which would be different enough to where maybe that's why they're looking for this kind of talent, right? If we're going to humor the idea that Sony's going to go with an ARM-based PlayStation 6. But, ARM is something that is oftentimes much more advantageous to use in smaller form factors, that be your phones, tablets, portables, right? And so we've had this as we just said, an ongoing rumor about possible PlayStation portables and Sony going back to that marketplace. And as I've said many times over, it's always a little rant that I like to get into, but when it comes to Sony ever revisiting a proper portable, as in local play, not like a PlayStation Portal, if they ever do that ever again, it has to basically be a portable PS4. And I say that because you have to log into this thing and a library is there. Developers have to you have to make this so that developers don't have to do anything. It has to be basically a Switch or a Steam Deck, right? That's the exciting thing about a Steam Deck. You log into Steam, most of your library is there, most of it works, and I say most because most of it does work. And for the Switch, it's a hybrid platform, so basically you can use it on the TV or you can use the portable form factor. Nintendo figured out a long time ago that, hey, the 3DS not really doing too well. We only shipped about 70 million 3DSs. That's half the DS did, right? The marketplace is shrinking. We got to get out of there. Obviously, Sony did not do well with the Vita because it's its own little bespoke device with its own dev environment that developers have to natively ship games to. So with that rant in mind, hopefully we're in agreement that the only way this financially makes sense for Sony to ship this thing is that it has to be, a little portable PlayStation 4. You log in and everything that you bought redeemed from PlayStation Plus, you can start playing it that way and whatnot. And so, but it gets into the conversation at that point of how do you cram a PlayStation 4, which is 2013 hardware, which even at the time that was a little bit outdated, but, how do you get that form factor into a portable, basically, right? Things like the Steam Deck or all these other little portable, well, not little, they're quite big, but these portable PCs that are on the marketplace now. And, a lot of them are great and they do work reasonably well, but we can see the core issue with them is that they can oftentimes either be extremely expensive or they run into thermal problems or there's a memory bandwidth issue. Obviously, battery life is not great on these, so you would think that for a more traditional platform holder like Sony, they would maybe want to go down a certain path that's similar to Nintendo Switch, which is very much more of this closed box, as in, obviously, it's a highly optimized OS when you log into this thing and turn it on or whatever the case is, but have a fairly competitive price point. And when I say fairly, I mean not $700-800. This thing would probably be, it would not be $200 either, so it'd be somewhere in the middle, right, to align with expectations of what you're getting, which are PS4 games in a portable form factor. Sony would probably look at the current portable PC landscape and just see where that is in terms of expectations for battery life, thermals, and, Sony is a traditional platform holder. PS4 games are meant to be simple. You boot them, you play them, and they're supposed to run and work, and, you're not messing with settings or anything as you would find in the PC environment. So this would be something where, how do you cram a PlayStation 4 into that kind of form factor? Maybe Sony would consider simply going with a completely different architecture, that being an ARM-based system, and that's where you'd have to build a compatibility layer to make sure that all those games are going to run and work properly, just as we saw Apple do with Apple Silicon, going from leaving behind Intel-based stuff, but they built that Rosetta layer to where all the Intel applications still work and run just fine, mostly on Macs. So, that's like one recent example. And ARM would be the way to go if Sony wants to see some serious efficiency gains. More so in the power draw scenario, right? So this would be probably the most ideal path for them to control thermals and maybe extend battery life as well, which in that case too, AMD and NVIDIA, I believe, are both working on ARM-based CPUs as well. So both of them have a roadmap of doing ARM-based CPUs sometime by 2025, 26, somewhere around there. That's in motion for them entering that segment of their business. And so, Sony has a relationship with AMD. They've been the provider now for PlayStation hardware since PS4. So I'm sure AMD would love to be a vendor for this new segment that they're entering. PlayStation hardware conceivably will sell a fair amount, and when I say a fair amount, in the context of a portable PS4, like the Steam Deck is still fairly niche, right? It sold $1 million something in 2022, then up to 3 million in 2023. So it's still fairly low volume. Even if this thing only sells 10 million or 14, 15 million lifetime, which is Vita numbers basically, at the very least, it's a platform that doesn't live and die by developer support. The support is already done in there. This would basically be some sort of in a way, niche Halo product in a sense, right? Like, so Sony probably wouldn't even have to be concerned with the numbers of how many they sell, just making sure that they don't lose money on them, because they would probably want to make sure that there's some kind of profit on each little device that's sold. But it's more about extending PlayStation ownership and having more engaged customers in that ecosystem, giving them flexibility with what they want for, out of the PlayStation platform, right? Sony cares deeply about how much time you spend on their platform, and they want to give you all these extenders as well, right? I mean, the Portal's one example of this. It's a very niche example, but like whether it sells a little bit or maybe more than what the company was thinking, which is what we're hearing, even then it's simply an extender for an existing PlayStation customer. So there's a lot of ways we can approach this, right? Some are also saying maybe it's for a VR headset. Also, this doesn't completely rule out that they're actually talking about older PlayStation hardware, like PS3, for example, which I don't want to, stir the pot and say that's happening, because I would suspect it's not happening. This reads to me like they're just worrying about the existing bulk library, which is PS4 and even PS5 software. So the one thing we can safely say about this job listing is that while we can't say for certain what library it is and where it's going, it confirms to us that Sony is committed to making sure that whatever library this is, it can go forward. And that's good news. I mean, quite frankly, I think PS4 and up is what they're going to make sure keeps going forward and forward for the foreseeable future. And I think that's at least very good news as they build some kind of team for what reads to me as some kind of compatibility layer between, as the listing describes, two different CPU architectures. With that said, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in my next video. You take it easy.